Hi, I'm comic book writer Mark Waid. Join me on today's DC Daily, where I talk about Kingdom Come, The Flash, and much more.
Comic book writer Mark Waid has produced some of the most influential stories in the history of DC. His work includes an 8-year run writing Wally West as the Flash, and one of the finest superhero stories ever told, Kingdom Come. In his 1992 Flash storyline, Born to Run, Mark wrote Wally West a modern origin story, and he's widely credited with transforming Wally into an iconic speedster in his own right. That Wally is able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Silver Age Flash Barry Allen is largely thanks to Mark's development of Wally as a hero. In 1996, Mark teamed up with artist Alex Ross for Kingdom Come, which set a new standard for superhero storytelling. Largely seen as a critique of the state of comic books at the time, the sprawling narrative and breathtaking artwork made Kingdom Come one of the most critically acclaimed and best-selling comic book series of all time. The scope of Mark's work for DC is impossible to describe. From JLA to Legion of Superheroes to 52, there's almost no corner of the multiverse he hasn't explored. His understanding of the DC universe is virtually unmatched, and he is, quite simply, one of the most important comic writers of our time. Hey everyone, it's Hector Navarro, and it is my honor to welcome to the show the incredible Mark Waid. Hello, Mark.
Hector, how you been, man?
I'm good. I'm doing good. And I'm now even better that I get to chat with one of my favorite comic book people in the world. This is going to be such a joy for me. This is going to be fantastic. My first question for you, Mark, how are you holding up?
Okay. I mean, as a freelancer, my lifestyle has changed about 5%. It's, now instead of leaving the house 3 times a week, I leave the house twice a week. So, but we're doing okay out here.
That's excellent. Are you doing anything different in that 5% to pass the time? Are you reading anything, watching anything, picking up any new hobbies?
I am actually reading. I started the Superboy, the great Superboy reread. I started in 1945, and I'm making my way through every Superboy story ever published. I'm up to 1962.
Wow. Well, I have to mention one of my favorite works that you've done is Superman Birthright, which is a wonderful, modern retelling of the classic Superman origin. And it is kind of absent of Superboy. And I believe you mentioned this before. When you look back on Superman Birthright, how do you feel about omitting maybe that sort of chapter of Clark's life?
If the continuity at DC had been different at the time, I absolutely would have made that a chapter in Superman's life. It's just, I was sort of playing the cards I was dealt at the time and doing my best to not actively contradict DC continuity of the moment. Nobody loves Superboy more than I do. So someday.
Here's what I want to talk about, Mark. Your run on The Flash is iconic and centers on Wally West. You were the person who sort of, again, updated Wally and gave him a modern origin story when you were first writing the title. What makes Wally West such a great speedster?
He's a fan made good. His big dream was to be the Flash, and he got it. And that was, as a kid, that's all he wanted to do. And I related to him in that sense. I was, the fanboy who made good. So I think that a lot of fans connect with him on that level, realizing that, again, almost like he's one of us, but look what he did.
That's absolutely true. I am of the era that I grew up with Wally as my Flash. So thank you for that. And when I go back and when I've read classic Barry Allen Silver Age Flash stuff, I'll be honest, sometimes it would be tough for me to connect with some of that emotionally. But yeah. I love that connection that you made as a writer. And you talk about it in your Wally West Flash run that's collected in Volume 1 in that beautiful introduction where you talk about exactly that, where you said, oh my gosh, this guy is me. I was a fan. I got the job. He was a fan. He got the job. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was the best writing you can always do is when you find some way to connect with a character, even if it doesn't seem like there's a similarity between you and the hero or the villain you're writing. Dig deep and find the littlest kernel, just something that you can relate to as a person, and then latch onto that. It was the fandom, it was the impatience, it was the general attitude that Wally had that I locked onto pretty quickly, and he very much spoke with my voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask about this because I love all of my different comic book universes, and the thing I love about DC is legacy. So just from your heart, from your brain, can you tell us why legacy is so important to DC?
It is because everything stems back to Superman, obviously. Everything stems back to 1938. Everything evolves from there. And the idea that, unlike any other comics company, DC has a rich tapestry of completely uninterrupted narratives between 1938 and today to build what is essentially the world's largest novel, if you will. That's something unique to DC. Other companies have patches of continuity, but they don't have that uninterrupted, we never stop publishing these characters. We've always loved these characters. And that means a lot to me. I think it means a lot to the fans.
I would agree, yeah. So I wanted to ask about Gotham by Gaslight, the first sort of official DC Elseworlds tale. Now, that has become such a huge part of comic book history. On the editorial side, were you all aware of what that was going to sort of turn into as you guys were working on it?
Not a bit. At the time, I was the editor of an anthology book called Secret Origins, which is fairly self-explanatory. We do the origin of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, whatever every issue. We had an annual coming up, and I thought, okay, it's 80 pages. I'll divide it into 4 20-page stories, and that will be sort of alternate universe takes on our heroes. What if Superman landed in Russia? What if Wonder Woman came to America now? What if Batman, and we weren't sure about Batman. I don't know what to do with Batman that makes him interesting. I was having a conversation with my fellow editor, Brian Augustin. 11 o'clock at night, phone rings at home. He calls me up. He's all breathless. He's got it. Batman versus Jack the Ripper. Gotham of 100 years ago. And boom. I mean, that's a go right there. So I went in the next day to editor Dick Giordano, who was running the place, and I practically acted out the story to him. And as God is my witness, Mike Mignola was literally just walking around the halls, having finished something and looking for something to do that day. And we leapt on him because we knew this was right up his alley. If Mike hadn't been there that day, no matter who would have drawn it then, we might not be talking about Elseworlds today. Just, it all came together.
That is amazing. That's incredible. One of your most iconic and influential works is one of my favorites, which is Kingdom Come. I love it so much. I think it is genre defining. It is industry changing. So what made you interested in telling an Elseworlds story like Kingdom Come?
To be fair, it was Alex. Alex is the guy who came to the table at DC and said, I've got a bunch of character sketches. I've got some ideas. I've got some notions, but I'm not a writer. Who can we hook me up with? And so I went out to lunch and just sat there and listening to Alex talking about what he was trying to achieve, what he was looking for. And as I sat there, I wasn't sure that I was up to the challenge. I wasn't sure that I was quite grasping it. That I'll never forget, as he was talking about the way things he kind of in his head, had that image of Superman for the first time, putting his glasses on Clark. And that's the end of his story. And once I had that, I knew I had everything.
Oh, that's great.
I have those so up on my wall as a reminder every day of, man, what a lucky guy I was to get a hold of that story.
That is amazing. I want to ask you this as one of the collaborative forces with Alex Ross behind that iconic story. We were talking about legacy. We're talking about continuity. I love my alternate universe stories. I love my alternate futures, things like The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Beyond. I always think that's a possibility. But sometimes when I reread Kingdom Come, I go, this has to be the way everything shakes out. So you as a writer, when you look back on Kingdom Come, do you consider it as another one of these, it could happen potentially? Or when you were in the thick of it and writing it, were you going, this is going to be the end of many of these stories of these characters? It's got to be this way.
It's not a prophecy, Hector. It's a cautionary fable. We don't want things to end up like that. So that was the thing we had in mind going in from day one. The only way to do that story is to set it apart from DC continuity and yet use as much of it as we can. I mean, Alex and I, we are the only two people on Earth that can argue about the Martian Manhunter for an hour. And so we both love those characters so intimately. We're both so familiar with them that a lot of the plotting sessions, a lot of the collaboration was just sitting around going, you know what? We haven't used Captain Atom. What would Captain Atom and the Metal Men be doing here?
How often are you and Alex Ross arguing about Martian Manhunter these days?
We don't see each other as often. We're in different parts of the country now, but we had a signing together a couple of years ago, had a great dinner afterwards. And my recollection is as genial as it was and as friendly as it was, yes, we got into an argument about the Martian Manhunter.
Well, I don't know who to root for in this instance. Mark, you know what? I imagine that you did probably win. You have got a DC knowledge that is unparalleled. Maybe Alex knows as much as you. He has to, but that's just that, to be a fly on that wall, that would have been great. The thing I love about Kingdom Come is, again, even though it's a cautionary tale, I get it. I will adhere to that now. It's a cautionary tale. I think the reason I love it so much and it speaks so much to me is those characterizations are so spot on. Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Diana, all of those characterizations are so amazing. And you also dove into Batman's trust issues even more on your JLA run, Tower of Babel. So why do you think that Bruce Wayne Batman continues to work with the League even though he has some of these hangups, these trust issues?
I think he does have these trust issues, but he's also a smart tactician. He knows it's better to be on these guys' side than not be on their side. And he's not a complete jerk. He is capable of having friendly conversations with people who he respects and feel are peers. So I think that Batman's relationship with the JLA is probably, it's not like Silver Age buddy, but it's a little warmer than sometimes I think you might think.
Yeah, I would agree completely.
Despite the fact that he had all these plans to kill them.
Despite that, I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't have that kind of dirt on their friends?
And here's the thing. This is what people don't understand. Batman's sin was to the Justice League was not that he had these plans to counteract each of them. It was that he didn't tell them. If he had just said to Superman, listen, just in case you want to know, good news. I got to back up in case you ever go nuts. And Superman would go, awesome. That is good to hear. But he didn't tell him. He kept the secret. And that was where Batman's propensity to keep secrets and not be open, that is it's an Achilles heel sometimes. I
agree completely, yeah. Again, talking about those characterizations, talking about the history of DC, we have 1938 Superman, 1939 Batman. And I am of the mind that I believe that both of these characters have made each other better over the decades. They've made each other better when we can have stories that involve both of them. So, question to you, Mark, why does the world need both Superman and Batman?
The quick answer is that we need all the heroes we can get, especially at this moment. But beyond that, specifically, Superman gives hope, and Batman is more of a reminder to you can hope, you can be optimistic, but you also need to be sensitive to your surroundings. You also need to sort of not be cynical, but a little skeptical of the world and not take it completely at face value.
I would agree, yeah. Another character that I love that you got a chance to work with is another character who brings hope is Supergirl. Yeah. And when you worked on Supergirl, you sent her to the future to spend some time with the Legion of Superheroes. What interested you about that dynamic?
I think the Legion always works better when it has somebody with an S on the chest in the team. And at that point, we were talking about bringing Superboy back in. Mm-hmm. That was off the table. We were offered Supergirl, and my immediate thought was, I wanted Superboy. But then once we got her into the future, oh my God, that was so much fun to write. She's such a bright, optimistic person. And the gag we ran entire run in the Legion is that, remember, she was in years and years in suspended animation. She wakes up on Earth. It must be like waking up to a dream, right? Not sure exactly what's real and what's real. And then immediately she's taken to the 30th century. So even worse, it's, she wasn't crazy, but she had in the back of her mind, I think this may just be a dream, but I'm going to roll with it.
I love that attitude. Have you gotten to that point in your Superboy rerun where the Legion shows up? Have you gotten there yet?
Yes, I have. I made my way to the introduction of the Legion in Superboy, 1958. And it's been fun watching them a bit. Is it Lightning Boy or Lightning Lad? Are they the 21st century or are they the 30th century? It's back in those days, continuity was important, but it was mostly written by a bunch of old white guys who weren't reading comics. So some of the details would sometimes slip through the cracks.
I could just picture some of those editorial rooms just like, what was it, the 21st century? Whatever. Yeah.
It's for kids. They won't remember.
Yeah, no kids that keep track that then will become writers themselves. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Mark, you also had the Flash and Green Lantern team up for The Brave and the Bold. I love this pairing. I love Hal and Barry. I love me some Kyle and Wally. No matter what you get, it's always going to be good. But what makes this pairing of the Flash and Green Lantern so iconic?
They pair off each other so well as characters. Barry is the staid, sort of deliberate, almost stick-in-the-mud guy. Hal is the guy who gets in a jet and flies it at 3 times the speed of sound just to see what will happen. Barry's got the income. Barry's got a regular job. Hal changes jobs every 8 seconds and is always a day late and a dollar short. having a friendship beyond that, despite their differences, that just made them so much fun to write. The comedy is just right there, man. One's the square, one's the forward-thinking guy. Even just the colors of their costumes together. And the fact that those two costumes alone are two of the top comic book character costumes of all time. They're so well designed, they're so perfect. That's why we don't tweak them over the years.
Alex Ross would also agree. He loves those costumes so much. Yeah. Well, speaking of Barry, I can see in the background there we've got an Adam West Batman cowl.
It's not just the cowl. I mean, look at that. Look at them, look at that. Come on.
The jaw.
But I am proud to have this looking over my shoulder. As we have discussed before, Hector, I am a prop-heavy guy.
Yeah.
I do love my stuff. You've got your functioning Dial H for Hero dial, which I know Sam Humphries would be very jealous.
Man, he should have put it in his contract that DC would have made him one of those, but he didn't. He messed up.
A working Phantom Zone projector, so this is my troll repellent.
Hang on, what era is that Phantom Zone projector from? That looks like that's got to be the 50s.
That's the 60s. He had models. He had the big bowl-shaped one that he would carry around, and this was his portable one. So
I love that.
I actually went to a Hollywood prop maker and said, "Here's drawings, do it up for me." I got it. I have a guy. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Do you have any DC famous props that you don't have yet that you love? Some dream prop that you would love to get made someday?
There's so many, man. Maybe the idol head of Diabolou. It may be, it's going to be the super obscure stuff. I think the belt of Zavam, who was a Superman villain. I think that actually literally is next on the list, the belt of Zavam. I like being the person in the world, the only person in the world who not only has this stuff, but knows what it is.
Wow, that is incredibly impressive. We've talked a little bit about some of your favorite things in DC Comics history. Do you have any writing inspirations? Who are your DC writing inspirations?
Two right off the bat. Elliot Maggin, who wrote Superman stuff in the 70s, and Marty Pasco. There is a page of Action Comics 500, which is my favorite comic book of all time. It's the life story of Superman. And there's a page in there where Superman talks about what it was like to be Superboy all alone and then have Crypto show up out of the blue, and how great that made him feel, and finally have somebody at his side who knew what the world sounded like when you flew at hypersonic speed, or the sound that bullets make when they bounce off living flesh. That one page set me on my path as much as anything, because that's the key. You've got to really think about what would your life be like if you had super speed, if you had a magic ring, if you had a lasso of truth. Really deep dive and think about that. To me, that's the fun stuff.
I love that you picked that moment, because I feel like you can see that influence in so much of your work, because it is on the one side, it's so comic booky and geeky to think about those kinds of logistics. But on the other side, it's all heart. It's all about Clark and Crypto. It's all about a boy and his first dog. And so much of your work has that, let's dive into the comic book awesome lore, and here's all of this heart. So that's a great answer. That's a fantastic answer. In that same vein, Mark, what does a writer need to make a good DC Comics story?
You need to love the characters. It's always wise for a writer to go back to the earliest stuff just to see what was in the genesis, what the X factors were that maybe made this character last 80 years where the other ones vanished. You need that. You also need to remember, and you hit upon it a minute ago, it's really about heart. It's really about emotion, because people don't really remember the plots of stories. What they remember is the moment when their blood was up. I challenge you to tell me the plot of any James Bond movie. You can't, but you can remember all the car chases. You remember all the big spectacles. That's the stuff you remember when your blood was up. DC characters lend themselves so well to that because they're so primal that you've got to connect with that as a DC writer.
So Mark, you mentioned those moments comic book readers will always remember, where our blood rises when we're reading something. Do you have a moment like that from your childhood, the first time your blood rose when you read something in a DC book?
Yeah, I do. It was a Superboy annual from 1964. It was a little before my time. There was a story in there where Red Kryptonite splits Superboy and Clark Kent into two separate people, where Superboy is good, but Clark Kent is evil and plotting to kill Superboy. And what stunned me about the story at the end was it ends by the villain's big mechanism just blowing up in his face and eradicating and killing him. And then that's it. That's the next to last panel of the story. In that time, characters didn't die like that. Villains didn't suddenly die of big menacing explosions. It was quite shocking to me, and it stuck with me to this day. That story gives me chills.
Here's kind of a fun, silly question for you, Mark. If you could pick any DC character for a quarantine buddy, who would you pick?
Brainiac 5. Because he could get the Zoom working much more easily than I could 30 minutes ago.
That's a great answer. Yeah, that 5th level intellect really helps with Zoom settings.
12th level, my friend.
12th level, that's right. No, Brainiac 5 is 12th level. You got me. You got me.
You're dead to me.
That's fair. Oh, I'm going to have to do so much work to get you to come back. Mark, before we wrap up, do you have any messages that you would like to pass along to all of the fans out there?
In this time especially, keep safe, keep healthy, wash your hands, and, connect with those characters because they allow you to dream and they take you out of the darkness of the moment sometimes. So don't be afraid to embrace those characters.
Absolutely. They give me hope. They give me hope. Just like every time I read Kingdom Come, I tear up at the end when Norman's talking about what Superman's real strength is, what his real power is. That's all I'm going to say. All right, Mark, this has been fantastic. That does it for us today. Thank you so much for logging on with me and chatting with me, Mark.
Anytime.
The rest of you out there, if you haven't read Kingdom Come, do yourself a favor, go read it. It's available on DC Universe along with Mark's runs on The Flash and JLA. As for me, I'll see you next time. Bye.